Hello and welcome to another comedian's interview for my blog Arichcomiclife. My name is Richard Gill and my blog describes my experiences of watching over 800 comedians and counting over the last 46 years. My guest today is the brilliant Jen Brister. Yes!
Woo!
Hello!
Thank you, Richard. I'm good, lovely. How are you?
I'm great, thank you very much. Lovely to see you, and thank you so much for doing this.
Absolute pleasure.
Thank you. It's going to be an interview all about your comedy career, and I'd like to go way back to the start and ask you, how did you become a comedian?
Wow. That is the question that I ask myself often. I became a comedian partly by accident, probably, but I started, my very first gig was because I did a drama and theatre degree at Middlesex University, and they had a stand-up comedy course as part of the degree. And so I did my very first gig at downstairs at the King's Head in Crouch End.
Know it well.
Back in the day, 1996. Wow. And I know, but due to a lot of procrastination, distraction and deviation, it has taken me 600 years to get to where I am now.
I don't believe that for 1 minute.
It's been a long old journey to get to the middle of the table in terms of comedy, but there we are. I don't know what I was doing for most of my 20s, but not focused. But that's how I started, and that's where I got the bug.
Wow. I used to live in Crouch End in 1995, and I used to go to downstairs the King's Head there all the time. And I first saw Harry Hill there 30 odd years ago, and to this day has the greatest opening line ever to a comedy act. He brushed past me, jumped up on stage and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm really sorry I had to have a testicle brought down, and I'm really sorry I'm late, I had to have a testicle brought down," and paused, got a laugh, and then he said, "From Derby." And I love that club. It's a perfect club. I went back there about 2 years ago, and it hasn't changed at all. It's such a good place.
It's what you imagine stand-up comedy club to look like.
Yeah,
in a dingy basement below a pub.
So your first gig was 1996, did you say? Was that the year?
Yes, but I didn't do anything with it for a long time after that. I did a dozen open mic gigs from 96 to 97. And then I went away. I went sort of bobbing about backpacking for a while. I did a few gigs in Australia. I used to do these gigs in a pub called the Espy in Melbourne. That would have been in 1998 or something. Yeah. And that was terrifying. The chap who ran the gigs was very kind to me. He obviously, I was very hit and miss, but he obviously saw something in me. He was like, just keep coming back, and I'll always get you on if I can. And if you bomb, just come back and do it again. And I just kept thinking, why would I come after I've died? Why would on earth I want to do that again, but why would you have me back? I've literally just stunk the room out. I mean, there's people who just can't even get eye contact with me. He was like, "Oh, that's just part of the whole thing, you know. Don't worry about it, mate. Come back." Anyway, I bombed quite a bit. I was very at the beginning of my open mic stand-up career. I'd either do really well, or I would bomb to the point of just eye-wateringly bad. I was just terrible. So I used to find it very traumatic doing stand-up comedy because I just didn't know what was working on how to make it work, or what wasn't working and why it wasn't working. That it was a complete lottery if the gig went well or not. Yeah, and that's why I just couldn't. For a long time, I couldn't do it because it was so, the deaths were so bad.
Oh dear me! Oh,
but it's a long time ago, so you know.
But as you progress, there's obviously more and more experience the more you do, and it is one of those things that as I say, the more you get out on stage and do it, the better you are, or the more experience you get. What do you mainly like to talk about on stage?
I mean, God knows. What do I talk about on stage? I mean, at the moment, I certainly talk about my children a fair bit, and being a parent, and I talk about whatever's happening in my life. And I suppose at the moment, being the mum of very young children, that dominates a big part of my life. But in my shows, I suppose if I've got an hour and I've got a bit more time, I like to talk about things that I suppose are a bit more broad, in terms of the subjects, things that are more societal rather than personal. But I always, my spin is always, I very much come from a personal perspective in whatever I'm talking about, whatever it is, whether it be, period poverty or the patriarchy or parenting. It's drawn from my experience, so I tend to make all of my comedy very, very personal. So that's probably it, really.
That's one of the magic things I love about it, though, because when you go out on stage, you look at the audience and you say, right, I am going to make you laugh no matter what, but it's the personal side of you that makes you very endearing and very warm to an audience, so they're drawn in and listening to you, which is half of it, I think.
Yeah, I think that took me a long time to get to that point where I could talk to the audience rather than talk at them. I think the talking to them was something I learned after many, many years and many, many hours on stage. And I feel like the trick with stand-up comedy is to make the audience feel like they're part of the conversation, even though you actually don't want them to say anything, because you not talk, actually. So... yeah, you are trying to make a connection, even if you're ranting and raving and whatever it is that you're doing, or you're wanting to appear high status or low status. You're trying to make a connection with the audience, because it's in that connection that you'll make them laugh.
Well, that is a reason for my blog, because I went on a writing course to try and improve my writing skills before I started the blog, and I was with a load of people who wanted to be a reviewer. And the woman said to me, "We forget about you. Why are you here?" And I said, "Well, I'm not a diarist. I'm not a critique. I'm not a reviewer. I'm a member of the audience out to have a good time and praise the heroes in my mind that will walk out and but fearlessly make everybody laugh." I think it's an extraordinary thing that you do, and it can only be a positive thing. It must be amazing when it goes well.
Yes, it the gigs, it's quite weird actually, because, and I think any comedian will tell you this, that the gigs that go well you don't remember.
No.
You don't remember the gigs that have gone well. You only remember the times that you've bombed. So almost, not to say that gigs that go well are forgettable, but you don't take them home with you. No. Often if a gig's gone well, I'll go, right, great, job done, off I go. But if a gig has really not gone well, then I will that stays with me. That will stay with me till the day I die. That's a difference.
Have you ever found it difficult at all? Did you ever find it difficult at all to break through into comedy?
Richard, yes. It's the very short answer to that.
Because I can imagine, because there's so many different people wanting to voice their opinion. Did you get nervous when you go on stage? Did you feel as though when you walked out there, were you extremely confident at the start, or no? The reason I'm saying this, because you are now. You appear now confident and fearless, I think.
I think now I am. I have done so many gigs. I've done so many hours on stage for so many years that there are very few situations where I walk on stage and I go, I haven't done this before and I don't know what this audience are like. Or if this happened, how would I respond? How would I react? I've been in every single situation, every single room, in every single, club in the country, all over the world. I've experienced it all. I don't think there's anything that can happen in a room now that I haven't dealt with. So that feeling of confidence comes from, I've been there, done that. But when you start out, you certainly don't have that confidence. And even if you think you're being confident, it's not real. It's not true. It's not until you, I suppose it's that whole trope about do it for 10,000 hours and then you are an expert. And I've definitely done my 10,000 hours that I'm not thinking about what I'm doing when I'm on stage anymore.
No.
Just feels it. I'm not thinking, I'm not panicking, and I'm not second guessing myself. And I did all of those things when I started. It'd almost be like watching myself doing stand up rather than just being in the moment. So, in answer to your question, it took me forever to get to anywhere in my career. I was desperately nervous when I first started, and inconsistent, and not good.
Well, now I think you're fantastic. Since I've seen you, you make me laugh so much, and I know you'll think, oh yeah, I say that to everybody, but you stand out. There is something about your performance that is so warm and endearing, as well as being exceptionally funny, that makes me laugh. And my friends around me, whoever I take along to see you, have all said how wonderful you are. So please take the compliment. I know you're not a great one for compliments, but please do. I'm a big fan. In 2018, you were support to Frankie Boyle. Tell me about that experience. I supported Frankie actually probably 2016 to 2019, right?
Something like that.
So it was a massive tour.
No, he wasn't actually touring. He had a residency at the Leicester Square Theatre.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And so for his one, when he had a special coming out, and then when he had, maybe if he had Live at the Apollo, or if he had Frankie Boyle's New World Order, whatever he was doing, he would work it out. I did do some gigs with him up in Scotland as well. I've done some gigs with him in Glasgow at the King's Theatre as well. I did a week of gigs with him there, 4 or 5 days. But predominantly we've been in London, and I really enjoyed it. And I really enjoy watching him work and his process and his company.
That's brilliant.
He's a very clever, cerebral, gentle man.
He is, yeah. He's very, but very cutting, very intelligent as well with his comedy. He really is. He's pin sharp.
He's pin sharp. That's a really good way of describing him. There's literally not a single ounce of fat on any of his jokes. There is not a word. There's not one extra word used. It's meticulous the way he writes, and he takes. I can't tell you how seriously he takes the whole process, to the point where I think, oh my God, I got to up my game, because I am blagging this. There's no blagging with Frankie. He'll work everything out to the letter.
Yeah.
And his work ethic is second to none. And his output is as well. But yeah, I mean, there's no one that can, at the moment, in terms of joke writing, I don't think there's anyone that can write a joke like Frankie can now.
He's brilliant. He did a lot of warm-up shows for his TV show. At a comedy, at Always Be Comedy that I went to, and you could tell in his mind he was going, that's not working, that's working, and he was dropping things and putting things in straight off the bat. It was very, very quick-minded, very quick-minded.
Yeah, he is very quick, because he's really bloody clever.
Yeah, well, yeah.
You know, I mean, sometimes conversations with him, I'll be like, I've got to back out of this because intellectually I can't handle this, whatever this chat is.
Let's move on to Edinburgh. I go and spend my holidays at the Edinburgh Fringe.
You absolute loon.
I'm very fortunate to do so. I first went in 2005 and I've been going every year since. What was your first Edinburgh Festival like?
Well, the first couple of times I went, it was just for a week here and a week there, which would have been the late 90s. And then in 2000, I went and I just did like a handful of gigs. And then I went in 2002 for a competition, which I'd won this competition. I mean, by this point, I shouldn't really have been doing competitions, I don't know. But anyway, and I got I got to spend 2 weeks at the Edinburgh Festival with that competition, doing 10 minutes in a show thing. And then I didn't go up with my first show until 2006, which I did my very first show, which was called Me, My Mum and I, to little to no hubbub or fuss or anything, or acclaim. And that was the most traumatic experience of my entire comedy career that year. I think it actually put me off from doing a solo show for about 5 years.
Wow.
Because it was so bad. It was so bad. It was... Sorry, I don't know if you can hear my children in the background.
Don't know.
So sorry about that. It's bedtime and
All right.
bedtime's always a struggle. I was doing everything on my own. I produced it. I was flyering it myself, obviously doing the show. I lost probably about, I lost a stone that month from trying to do everything, trying to do my show and running around and not eating properly. I got quite sick about 2.5 weeks in. I lost my voice. I was very lonely. I was obviously overcompensating with a lot of booze in the evening, which I don't know if you know this, Richard, but actually alcohol is a depressant.
Yeah.
It's a little fact for you there.
Yeah.
So generally the whole thing was a bit of a disaster. I really liked my show and I was quite pleased with my show. For a first show, I think it was a perfectly good show, to be fair to myself, but I just wasn't getting... I didn't have a big machine behind me. I didn't have any PR. The whole thing was a bloody shambles, really. I did have PR, but they were crap.
Yeah.
So I was at the Pleasance Courtyard. My posters never turned up, so I didn't have any. I didn't even have posters of myself around the courtyard, so I was completely invisible. And long story short, it was a nightmare. So, some days I would have an audience, and some days I would have like 5 people after I'd been flyering all day. And by the third week, I was like losing the will to live. Yeah, but
so that must have been quite traumatic, to say the least.
I mean, just awful.
Yeah.
But I mean. On the flip side of it was I made, good friends with other comedians. I actually was by the end of that month, I was quite match fit.
Yeah.
But I just didn't have the support I needed. The agent I had was trying to steer me towards presenting instead of stand-up comedy. I wish I'd had an agent that had pushed my comedy. I had one that was trying to get me out of stand-up.
Right.
And I was very resistant to that. But the long and the short of it was that I didn't end up doing another solo show till 2011.
Wow.
And I didn't really put much emphasis on my stand-up for a long time, for about another 2 years. After that, the 2 years after that, Edinburgh, I sort of went, right, I'm not going to do stand-up anymore. I'm going to do something else, because my agent was telling me to do something else. And my heart was like, can you go to Edinburgh and go through that again? I don't think you can. So let's try something else. So in 2008, I did a sketch show with a friend of mine called Reception, which we did that at the Pleasance. And in 2009, by this point, I had lost any momentum that I'd got from 2006 had gone.
Wow.
And I had to start back at the beginning again. And I was back doing a package show, which I did called The Comedy Zone, which I did with Ed Gamble, Chris Ramsey, and oh my God. That is absolutely dreadful that I've forgotten his name. Don't cut this bit out. Have I just had a stroke?
Ed Gamble, Chris Ramsey, you,
and okay. Well, anyway, let's
don't
move on.
worry about it.
That is really terrible, and let's definitely cut that out.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I did the Comedy Zone in 2009, and that also was incredibly traumatic because I was just miserable doing that package show because they were very young. I was in my mid-30s. You know, it was all kind of. I felt like I was starting again from the beginning, even though I'd been going for a long time, and my ego was very fragile, and Avalon had made it clear that they weren't really interested in me, and that I found very traumatic as well. Bit like being in an abusive relationship where you're like, love me, and they're like, only if you change, and you're like, I don't know how to change.
So you obviously had this determination to keep going, even although it was very traumatic, because now you're very successful at what you do, and you get really good audiences. So again, it's all, however bad the experience may be, you're determined to come through and become a superb comedian. One thing I do have in spades is stamina. And also I think that I made a decision sort of around 2009 when I could see these young men getting all the opportunities and I wasn't getting any. And that I was like, okay, the only thing I can do is get good at comedy. That's all I can do. And then if I get good at comedy, maybe somebody will notice. And so really from 2009 until today, my only focus, it's not been to get on television, and it's none of those. It's just get really good at stand-up comedy, as good as you can get, and then hope that people notice. And, you know, I feel like that's a really good attitude to have towards what you do, because ultimately, whatever happens, if you're really good at what you do, and it's not about, it's not about, you haven't focused on the PR, you focused on the content, no one can take that away from you. And eventually somebody will go, why hasn't this person been given a break? They're really great. You know, so, and that happened with me, really, with my agent and with my opportunities in terms of the few opportunities I've had in telly have come that way as well. So, but I feel like in terms of the club circuit, that came a lot quicker because it was very much more meritocratic. So by 2011, after working my ass off for 2 years, by 2011, 2012, I was getting the club gigs I wanted. That's brilliant, because I've told this story to many a comedian who I've interviewed. I had a go at stand-up comedy once at Edinburgh. I wanted to get it out my system. I thought I've seen so many, I'll go on a gong show. So I know the guy who ran the Free Fringe, and he said, "Oh yeah," he said, "We've got one going on a Monday afternoon at the Haymarket with it's just the audience is all old people." I said,
everything you're saying sounds wrong.
It couldn't be any worse. So I had this script that I did about me crashing cars in Carlisle, my home city. I used to love driving, but I was never very good at it. And he loved it, and he said, "Well, go out, knock 'em dead, and you'll be great." and there was 3 people in the crowd, and I walked out, and the first thing I said was, "Hello, ladies and gentlemen. People think I look like Eddie the Eagle Edwards, but I can't see the resemblance myself." And of course, I'm his double. And one old bloke at the back went, "Fuck off," and gunged me off. So,
oh my God, tough crowd, Rich.
So I walked off to my own footsteps, and the promoter said, "Have another go, another go." Same thing happened, and I said, "I think my place is in the audience. I will support them forevermore. Never say never again." But
well, I don't think that's I don't think gong shows are necessarily the place to see if something's working. If if on an introduction someone tells you to fuck off and gongs you off, I mean, let you have a go, for goodness sake.
Well, at least I can say I had a go, and as I say never again. But I sit there at a comedy gig, and the admiration and my passion for the art I hope is amazing, and the blog and everything. I will support you all forevermore because I think it's great. When I saw you at Edinburgh, I saw 2 of your solo shows. I saw Meaningless in 2018, and I saw Underprivileged in 2019. As well as all your many performances you've done for Always Be Comedy and elsewhere. I saw you at the Greenwich Film Festival this year. Can you describe your writing process and where you get your ideas from? If there is a process, I'm interested in how you construct a show.
I spend a very long time thinking about the show before I even begin writing it.
Right.
So I have a lot of ideas of themes that I want to talk about or discuss, and then I'll look at what I've got. I might already have a bit of material that I've got, and I'll go, what can I do with this? How can I build on this tiny bit of material that I already have? And sometimes I can, and sometimes I can't. And then I guess I go away and I just start doing loads of new material nights, and I'll just and at that point all I'm doing is seeing what sticks, seeing what material works. Does this work? Does that work? Da, da, da. Okay, so and then I'll look and I'll go, okay, I've got 15 minutes. What's coming out from here? And then I'll think about the stuff I want to talk about, and then I'll start trying to like a model maker. I'll just add bits of stuff onto it. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, well, I want to talk about that, and I want to talk about that, and I want to talk about that. Okay, so how would I make that funny? And what attitude do I have to have with that? How can I, and then I'll just fill a notebook full of just rants, really, and then I'll try them out.
Your rants are priceless. They really are. When you get cracking, it's so funny to see.
I think I've perfected my rant. That's finally I've done that. And it's I've got a director, and he'll say, thematically you're avoiding certain things which I think you need to address, and he'll go, why are you not talking about this? Why are you not talking about that? Or if you're talking about that, why are you not linking it to this? Or why are you not thinking about that? And then I'll go away and go, oh yeah, that's a good idea. Or I'll go, no, that doesn't sound right to me. Or it's sort of like a process. And then by the time I'm previewing it, I've got it into some sort of semblance of a shape, and then that's when I really start to hack away at it and write the jokes that will eventually be in the show. Because prior to that, it will be little bits of routines that I know work filled in with a lot of shit that doesn't. And then it's just about hacking away at it, Or maybe I could, like a little bonsai tree and trimming. I'd like to say trimming around it, but actually you need a machete to get through the shit that I'm chucking at people.
I think you're putting yourself down a bit.
Absolutely not. I particularly with Underprivileged, because I had such a short space of time to write that show, because I was also had also written my book.
Yeah.
So I had a very short space of time to write Underprivileged, and the preview season for that was brutal. And I have no problem talking about my deaths and my failures, but that particular preview season for Underprivileged was Yeah, I mean, it makes actually making my eyes water thinking about it. It
Brutal,
was,
as you say, yeah.
It was bad. I came away thinking I don't even know if I can do stand-up comedy. So the fact that show eventually became the show it is and it worked at the festival.
Well, you were the first show I saw at the 2019 Fringe, and I couldn't believe it. It was easily the best thing I'd seen for the first half of that week. It was just fantastic, phenomenal.
Thank you, Richard. I'm very proud of that show. Yeah. I'm just sorry that it didn't get the run it deserved with the touring it because of COVID. So that I've actually made the difficult decision to can it now. And
yeah, I saw that because I was due to come and see you. I was going to surprise you in Carlisle. I was going to go to the fire station in Carlisle on the 11th of April, and I got an email saying that it'd been cancelled. I thought it may have been rescheduled, but it's such a shame.
Yeah, it's just for a show that I wrote in 2019 to then be doing it in 2022. Yeah, I just thought, I'm not going to want to do that. I'm not going to want to do this show in 2022. Yeah. And that's what I was being offered. So I just said, look, or even the end of this year, to be honest, I made it very clear. I was like, if I can get it into the first half of this year, I'll just about be able to do this show and give it the welly it deserves. But by the second half of this year, my heart won't be in it. Because I feel like with stand-up comedy, it's not like a play. It doesn't, for me, it has a shelf life and then it's gone. And then you have to step away from that show because that show doesn't have the same relevance or the same, you can't make the same connection with it. So, and I'm nearing that now with it. So what I will do, or what I hope to do, is film it.
Great.
And then stick it on the internet. And then if people want to download it or stream it, they can.
That's brilliant. That's something at least you're getting out of it, which is great.
Yeah.
You've appeared many times on radio, most notably as a BBC Six DJ in 2007.
Yes, that was my foray away from stand-up comedy, being a radio presenter.
Yeah, as well as a guest on the Now Show and the News Quiz, which I've been in the audience many times for both of them.
I bet.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. That was for Radio 4. And on TV with a brilliant performance at Live at the Apollo. I keep watching that back. It's so good.
Oh, thank you.
Are there any differences, do you think, appearing on TV and radio as opposed to live stand-up?
Well, I don't know how to put this. I think that when I do stand-up, that is you're getting the purest essence of me.
Right.
Because I'm talking about what I want to talk about in the way I want to talk about it. I mean, obviously for the Live of the Apollo, you're not allowed to, swearing is but you can adapt it with the swearing and what have you. Yeah. But in terms of the content, they're pretty easy about it being adult content as long as there's no too many F-bombs. Yeah. In terms of radio, you are much more limited in what you can talk about, but equally on shows like the News Quiz in particular, not so much the Now Show, but on the News Quiz, I'm exercising a muscle that that's a very flabby muscle because it's not a strong muscle. My strength is in stand-up and doing the things like the News Quiz where I'm writing jokes for a satirical show, which is not comedy that I do normally, requires me to exercise a different part of my brain to write that material. And I think what people might not realise is that when you get the News Quiz, you get a bump of stuff that they go, right, and this is what we want you to write jokes for.
Yeah.
And so you can spend 2 days writing jokes on the News Quiz and you might get out not even a third of them. Right. And then even if you get a third of them out, a third of those don't make the edit. So, and you're not really in control of what goes in and what goes out, or sometimes people can step on your punchline, and then you've just been rambling on with the setup, and then somebody goes, yeah, because that reminds me of it. You're like, I haven't finished. So the news quiz is a show that requires you to be very present, and you have to be very present in the room so that you can react. The people that are best on the news quiz are the ones that are able to improvise and react in the room. And I think that, again, in much the same way that stand-up comedy is something where I don't have to think about it, I think if you do enough of those panel shows, that also becomes something that you have the confidence to go, I don't even have to think about what I'm doing because I'm just listening and I'm going to react. But when you first get those things, you're like, oh, you're waiting for your moment to speak. I've got something I want to say. And you're not really listening to what's happening. And so I think you can tell the people that have done it a few times, like I have, and you can tell the people that do it every week.
Was it similar with the Now Show then? Because the Now Show was more routines. They have guests on and they do a routine and then they work their way through that. Was it a similar experience on the Now Show?
No, the Now Show, I wrote, I can't remember how many minutes you have to write, but I don't know, 4 minutes, say a 4 minute set or 5 minute set.
Yeah.
And then you can read it out.
Right.
If you want to. Yeah. So the bit that I did for the Now Show ended up being in Meaningless. I did the bit about wanting my piece of the pie. I did my bit about the gender pay gap.
Yeah.
And I did that bit for the Now Show.
Brilliant.
Lots of people complained about it.
Oh, I loved it.
Yeah. Oh, some horrible lesbian banging on about feminism on the Now Show. Is it not what I pay my licence fee for? I thought, you don't pay your licence fee for Radio 4, you idiot. So the Now Show is much easier, because you're just delivering.
When you go to the Now Show, if you're in the audience for the Now Show, they leave a sheet of paper on your seat with a question on, and the question gets the daft answers get read out at the end of the half hour. And one week it was, what's the most ridiculous thing ever to happen to you at school? And my answer was, when I was in the sixth form, I fell asleep and some bastard Tipp-Ex'd my glasses, and when I woke up I thought I'd died. And that's exactly true, right? So the guest was John Culshaw, and it got read out on Radio 4 with him doing an impersonation of Alan Bennett. And
Brilliant.
I thought, that's mine, that's me. And I thought,
it's almost like he knows you.
It was very, very funny. Does your material differ at all when you go on tour from town to town?
Do you mean when I'm doing my tour show or I'm doing a set?
Well, both.
Not massively. No. I mean, if I'm doing my tour show is my tour show.
Yeah.
So they just get that, and if they don't like it, tough. When I'm up north, I try not to make any references about the South, because I think that's as a comedian you learn that very quickly. If you've got a southern accent, don't draw attention to it.
The reason I asked the question is that I've seen Ken Dodd, I've seen Victoria Wood, and they specifically, to get the audience on their side, had gags about or stories about the town or city they were playing in. Do you tend to do this, or is that a way to get the audience in, or do you not think about that and you just...
I don't.
No.
I don't do that. No. I don't think you need to do that.
No.
I mean, I think it's a nice touch if you do, but I don't think it's necessary. I mean,
I wish I hadn't asked the question.
No. It's not. It's not a bad question. I mean, I've been in. I mean, the only place that I do it, I suppose, is Liverpool.
Right.
Because Liverpool is a city that you have to acknowledge you're in Liverpool. It's the only city where they demand that you acknowledge where you are. And it's also a city that if you do it, you can, and you do it with grace and you do it without being a dick, they do let you poke fun at them a bit. But a very gentle nudge, nothing too hard. Because they're very fucking proud. And so I would say that Liverpool is the only place I do it because it amuses me to do it. But otherwise, no.
I had a really bad time about 18 months ago and I lost my mum. And
I'm sorry, Richard.
It's fine. It's one of those things. And my brother was with me. My older brother was with me, and he said, see if you can go and do some comedy in Carlisle and take your mind off it. So I went to the fire station, and the Noise Next Door were playing the sketch group.
Yeah.
And they'd clearly never been to Carlisle before, the way that they did it, and they came on and they said, can anybody tell me what's the best thing about Carlisle? And somebody in the audience yelled out Carlisle United, the football club. And then they said, what's the worst thing about Carlisle? And I was sitting at the back with a solitary pint of beer, feeling really low. And my friend, who I didn't realise was in the audience, yelled out, Richard Gill. And they went, is he here? He's supposed to be in London, is it?
Listen, what I love is that every comedian knows who you are.
Well, the next thing I was on stage with them doing this daft song, and they really cheered me up. And I thought I go around a lot of different cities, not just London. I go to Manchester a lot. I go to Scotland a lot. I come down to Brighton for the Fringe, and it's fascinating watching all the different comedians in the different towns and cities. But that's really what I was getting at, any geographical differences, but I don't think there is. I think once you've got your show that is watertight, you're away and you just go and do it to the audiences.
Yeah, I mean, I think that comedians, I have a support act, so right. I make partly because, I've got an hour, that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
But also partly because for a lot of comedians, it's very hard to get stage time, and it's really helpful to up and coming comics to be given regular stage time by another comedian.
Sure.
In nice venues so that they can get better. And so I have always appreciated when people have helped me. So I'm like, okay, this is my turn to do that.
That's wonderful.
But if I didn't have a support act, then that 20 minutes or half an hour at the top would be spent emceeing it basically a little bit and finding out and talking to people and using that time to do that. And I think other comedians do that. But yeah, and if I didn't have a support act, you know what, I probably would as well.
Too right, yeah, very much so. Who are your favourite comedians, past and present, then?
God, comedians always get asked this question, and I can never bloody remember. You'd think I just have a stock answer, wouldn't you, after all these bloody years? But no, I don't. I loved Victoria Wood when I was growing up, and French and Saunders. They were my faves. I thought they were amazing. They were very inspirational to me. I feel like they had a huge impact on me as a teenager, and probably have a lot to do with my passion for comedy and why I'm in comedy.
Yeah. Definitely.
I think seeing women do that made me realise that's something I could do.
Fantastic.
Later on now, I mean, as a comedian, who are the people that always made me... I mean, I love watching Kerry Godliman. She always makes me laugh. Always.
Like you, she's one of my favourites.
She's just got funny bones.
Yeah.
I love watching... I just love watching people at the top of their game, really, whether it be in this country or comedians in the US. I've seen Maria Bamford about 3 times.
She's brilliant. Yeah.
Honestly, every single time I'm just crying with laughter. I think she's absolutely brilliant. There are other women in the States like Ali Wong and Margaret Cho, that I think are Paula Poundstone. Wanda Sykes is out of this world. I think she's phenomenal.
When I asked Maureen Younger, who's done an interview here, she said you. Her answer was you, because you're very good friends, and I agree.
She's a very good friend, that's why.
The reason I asked that question is that there's a section in my blog called The Ones That Got Away, and I've written 25 comedians who have either passed on or I haven't been able to see. And every entry in my blog has got so many memories for me. And I think if you ask this question, memories do come flooding back, because it is an extraordinary art form.
It's interesting you call it an art form, because I think most people, and I would include comedians, don't see it as an art form. And I think it's because a lot of our time is spent in clubs trying to make pissed up people laugh. And it let me tell you, Richard, it does not feel like an art form on a Saturday night in Nottingham. It's like putting some fires out. That's what it feels like.
Ken Dodd had the great line. He described laughter. He said Freud said, and he described this great long sentence about laughter going in his, coming through his chest and then out through his mouth, and he described this wonderful vision of laughter. And then he said, mind you, ladies and gentlemen, Freud never played Glasgow on Glasgow on Fire on a Friday night.
He knows.
Like me, before you were a comedian, did you go to a lot of comedy gigs as a member of the audience?
Yeah. Yes, I did. And I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved watching comedy. I loved watching live comedy more than anything. I used to, it was such a thrill. It was such a treat. And at a point where I had absolutely no desire to do stand-up comedy at all, like none. Like there wasn't an inch of my body that when I first saw stand-up comedy live at the age of 19 or 18 actually, that I thought to myself, I want to do that. I looked at them and I just thought, I don't know how you're doing that. I don't know why you would want to do that. I love it, but that is crazy. And I thought they were like magicians. I just thought how... And I genuinely didn't know that it was material that was written. I just thought they got up on stage and were telling these stories and they were just so clever. And, you know, I think the first time I started to realise, oh, hang on a second, this is material, is because I saw Donna McPhail about 3 times in a very close space of time, and it was the same material, as it would be if you saw me. But I didn't care because I loved watching it. Yeah. So it didn't matter to me. I thought Donna McPhail, the times that I saw her at Jongleurs and at the Comedy Store, I still remember now. Yeah. She was such a brilliant comedian. And
didn't she go into TV? Did she go into
TV? She presented the Sunday show with Dennis Pennis was on it, and Paul Tonkinson.
Yeah.
They hosted it together. Yeah.
That's superb, 2020 and what the time we're living in now, it's been a very strange year. You've done many online gigs that I've seen. How do you find online gigs as opposed to live stand-up? And what do you think the future is for comedy?
Well, hopefully live gigs.
Please. Thank you. Yes.
I think the Zoom gigs are a great stopgap, but I don't think they are a substitute for going to sit in a room with a load of other people and being in an audience. It's just there's no comparison.
You can't beat it.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's something to be said for being able to do a gig and then close your laptop, go downstairs and pour yourself a glass of wine. Let me tell you, I'm not wholly against that. But in terms of certainly in terms of being a stand-up comedian, if this was my future, I'd knock it on the head.
Wow. Please come back and do live things. I am exactly the same as you. I don't know how I would have got through lockdown without the online comedy. However, I really, really miss live comedy, because you're in a room and anything can happen in that room at any one time. That one group of people who are in the room, you're there at that specific time, and it's just magical to watch. I really miss going to a pub, having a few beers, and then going to the comedy.
Exactly, making that connection, and you're having that sort of shared experience, which you just don't get online. You can't, in your separate living rooms.
Yeah. Just before we go, is there anything else you'd like to say? Have you got any online gigs coming up? Please mention your book, which I am going to buy at Easter from Waterstones.
There we go. Please buy my book, The Other Mother. It's available at all bookshops. I don't know if it is, actually, it might not be. But you can certainly get it online.
Yeah.
It's a comedy memoir about the first 2 years of my children's lives. Yes, it is about parenting. No, you don't have to be a parent. Yes, it is funny. No, you don't have to like kids. Yeah.
Have you got any online gigs coming up?
No doubt. Well, actually, I've got one tonight, but that's probably not of any use to anyone. Yes, I mean, I've got various different online things going on, but it's nice to see that I've also started to get some live work put in my diary for the summer. So I'm really excited about that.
Definitely, I will come and see you again.
Thank you, Richard. I hope to see you there. That would be lovely.
Absolutely. And where can people find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter at Jen Brister, Instagram at Jen Brister Comedy, the same Facebook. You can also find my comedy special on Next Up Comedy, Soho Online, or you can also find it on Amazon Prime under the Soho Theatre Comedy package. Well, but if you've got Prime, it's free.
Well, I have, and I will.
Oh, just watch it, Richard. You don't just put it on in the background and go make some cup of tea.
Thank you so much for your time. I've thoroughly enjoyed talking to you.
It's been a real pleasure, Richard. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, and all the very best to you. And I definitely will see you again soon. All the best to you.
All right then. Take care.
Thanks now. Bye bye.